That's right. Producer James, you saved the fighting for Scott Besson. This program is produced by America's producer, James Mahoney, and a team of workers behind him on this Wednesday in Washington. I'll tell you something. You talk about Washington, D.C., they call it Hollywood for ugly people. And what they're doing today on Capitol Hill might bring us a little bit closer to L.A. Don't stop me when there's a car chase on TV. You know, this is pretty good stuff for ratings, and we might have more of them around here, it looks like, as the House considers legislation related, once again, to crime in the District of Columbia, including today a measure authorizing the Washington, D.C. Police Department to again engage in car chases. Then again, since it takes me about an hour to drive 9 miles home, I'm not sure they're going to get very far if they try to outrun the police. Also happening on Capitol Hill today, a series of hearings. We had Kash Patel yesterday, director of the FBI, back today for round 2. But so too is the former director of the CDC, the one who was fired by RFK Jr. This is Susan Monarez, former head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, for basically an oversight hearing, if you will, by the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. They call it the Health Committee. They call it HELP. It's been a couple of weeks since she's been fired, and the chair of this committee, a physician by the name of Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, has been on this program before, not real happy about the way this played out. And so it was a pretty interesting conversation. Monarez opened with some of these remarks. Let's listen.
Secretary Kennedy demanded 2 things of me that were inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. He directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation, regardless of the scientific evidence. He also directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. He said if I was unwilling to do both, I should resign. I responded that I could not pre-approve recommendations without reviewing the evidence, and I had no basis to fire scientific experts.
Pretty wild stuff. Monarez says Kennedy became very upset, attacked the CDC as corrupt, saying that employees were responsible for, quote, killing children, unquote. Not sure what this hearing leads to, but this is an interesting moment in Washington that we played before our panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeanne, Zaino, and Rick Davis are with us right now. Jeanne is, of course, our Democratic analyst and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick is our Republican strategist and partner at Stone Court Capital. Jeanne, Bill Cassidy feels like some promises were made in RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, and they have since been broken. Is there any recourse that came from this hearing today?
First, Joe, I have to say that America is demanding that America's producer get on camera so we can see James, the great James. So
I've been working on that for a long time. I'll stay at it.
I know you have.
He's the man behind the curtain, Jeanne.
He is the great wizard. You know, it was quite a hearing. It is still going on. When I came on here, and you know, some really dire information came out. At one point, the question was, is there anybody left at the CDC who is not a political appointee? In other words, a scientist, a physician, somebody who is apolitical and a career official? And the answer was no. You know, we heard about the health secretary trying to gag the head of the CDC, angry that she would dare to talk to the senators or communicate with the senators who confirmed her. So much for radical transparency. And both of the witnesses were asked about their worst nightmare and what keeps them up at night. And they talked about the fact that we are not prepared because of the way they have cleaned out the CDC of experts for what can happen. And of course, we all just experienced COVID, so a lot can happen. And then I think the worst part is that Americans are being left with a lot of questions about vaccines. And there is no question that vaccines have saved millions and millions of lives. And all of that is being questioned today, and a lot of distrust out there, hence the gunman we saw not that long ago.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Secretary Kennedy has a friend in Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, went toe-to-toe with Monterez about the safety and effectiveness of COVID vaccines as part of this hearing, and in fact tweeted about this. Kennedy on X after thanked Rand Paul for this exchange. Let's watch and listen.
Does the COVID vaccine prevent transmission?
The COVID vaccine can reduce viral load in individuals who are
Does it prevent transmission?
When you have reduced viral load, you will have reduced transmission.
But in other words, it doesn't prevent transmission. You can still transmit the virus if you've had the vaccine. Does the COVID vaccine reduce hospitalization for children under 18?
It can.
It doesn't. The statistics are inconclusive, and the reason you can't prove that it does is there's so few people under 18 that go to the hospital. Does the COVID vaccine reduce the rate of death for children under 18?
It can.
Once again, it can. That's a ridiculous answer. No, it doesn't, and there is no statistical evidence that it does reduce the death rate.
There you have it. Of course, an ophthalmologist, Dr. Rand Paul. Rick Davis, what do you think about the back and forth here today, and should Americans expect anything to come from it?
Yeah, it was pretty much an opportunity for everybody to exercise their preconceived attitudes. One, as you point out, toward COVID. I mean, the Republicans have had a burn their saddle on COVID for a long time, which is ironic because if it was the Donald Trump administration that was able to find the vaccine, produce it, and distribute it in an almost Herculean way to the entire world. You'd think that we'd all be taking credit for that and not undermining the success of one of our greatest accomplishments. So in addition to that, I think the politicalization of these institutions was on the hot seat today. And it echoes a lot of other hearings. You mentioned that the FBI Director, Kash Patel, is on his second day. I would say almost half the questions associated with him is the politicalization of the FBI and promises he made in confirmation that he's not keeping. By the way, promises that Secretary Kennedy made to senators like Cassidy that weren't kept on keeping his hands off of vaccine policy. So promises made, promises not kept is kind of the theme this week in Washington.
Wow. Well, that's saying a lot, Rick. Jeanne, it's not just today. Something really important is going to happen tomorrow in Atlanta. And this is one reason why Senator Bill Cassidy is upset. The vaccine advisory panel that RFK Jr. has repopulated with people who in many cases doubt vaccines or are skeptical of the vaccine program. They start 2 days of meetings that could potentially change recommendations on vaccines for not only COVID, but hepatitis B and chicken pox. Bill Cassidy requested, when the firings on this panel took place, that this meeting be postponed. Jeanne, they're doing it anyway. Does Congress just not matter?
It is. That's been the frustration, I think, of many people during this Trump 2.0 administration, and even going back a little bit earlier, but certainly in this administration, that the administration and people in the executive branch are plowing ahead, and Congress certainly can assert itself if it chooses to, but the problem is it has not. And on the issue of this meeting, it is critically important. You know, Dr. Monarez said today she was open to changing the schedule for childhood vaccines if there was data and science behind it. Her problem was that the health secretary asked her to preemptively agree that she would take the recommendations before they came out, before the meeting was held, regardless of the science. And of course, that would be, something that no scientist could do and no public officials should do. And so that is the problem here. And, Kennedy is somebody who described the COVID vaccine as the deadliest ever made. That is absolutely factually untrue. He is a longtime vaccine skeptic. And the reality is that certainly if science leads you in a new direction, you follow it. But the reality is that vaccines have saved millions of lives, trillions of dollars, and millions of hospitalizations in the United States and around the world. And so this idea that we should all be skeptical of vaccinations is going to lead to death. And that is where we are in this country, and Congress should step up, and Senator Cassidy should be deeply alarmed by what's going on.
He's got to worry about re-election, right, Rick? I don't know what Senator Cassidy can do or will want to do here, but you bring up a pretty good point about Operation Warp Speed. At what point does President Trump tire of this conversation as it runs against one of the great accomplishments of his first term?
It's a little bit baffling to a lot of people around Donald Trump as his supporters and folks in his administration. Donald Trump cut a deal with, Bobby Kennedy to give him authority over health policy in the United States if he endorsed him. I mean, Kennedy has said that repeatedly. I'm not making this up.
Wow, yeah.
And so that's what he's getting. And Donald Trump got the advantage of having the Maha movement sign on 100%, helped him win the election, and now it's Kennedy's job to rule, even if he undermines some of the great accomplishments of Donald Trump's first term. I would say in Cassidy's case, there's actually a direct application of harm. There is an outbreak of whooping cough disease in Louisiana right now. And you're right, he wants to get reelected. And what's he got to do? He's got to make sure that doesn't spread any further than it already is. Yeah. And he could not get any kind of satisfaction from the health secretary on attacking that, with a more aggressive vaccine policy. And so, whether it's measles or whooping cough, these are what's affecting people's lives today, and it's going to affect his reelection if he's not careful.
I talk about local politics. It's really just amazing stuff. Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino, great conversation. Thank you. Our great panel will be back in hour 2, both of our politics contributors, as we get ever closer to our special Fed coverage. Coming up on the 1 o'clock hour on the East Coast, that means we're 1 hour away from an announcement on interest rates.